A hippo spends up to 16 hours a day in the water, and it cannot swim. Not badly, not slowly, at all. By the end of this video, you will know how a 2-ton animal moves through a river without swimming, why its sweat turns red, and why chemists have been trying to copy that sweat for 20 years. The hippopotamus lives in the rivers and lakes of sub-Saharan Africa. A large male can pass 4,000 pounds, which makes it one of the heaviest land animals alive. It spends the day submerged and comes out at night to graze on grass. Everything about it looks built for water. The eyes, ears, and nostrils sit on top of the head, so it can stay almost completely under and still see, hear, and breathe. So the obvious assumption is that a hippo is a strong swimmer. It is not a swimmer at all. Hippo bones are extraordinarily dense, a condition called pachyostosis. There is no thick blubber layer, no air-filled bone structure, nothing that would make the animal buoyant. A hippo is simply heavier than the water it sits in. Drop it in deep water, and it sinks. So how does something that sinks live in a river? It walks. A hippo moves along the riverbed in a slow-motion gallop, pushing off the bottom with its toes, which are slightly webbed. In deeper water, it launches off the bottom, glides forward, and lands again, over and over. Scientists describe it as looking like an astronaut walking on the moon. Underwater, it can cover ground at around 5 miles per hour. On land, it can hit 22. When it needs air, it pushes off the bottom, breaks the surface, breathes, and sinks back down. Which raises a second question. If water is this awkward for a hippo, why live in it at all? The answer is the sun. A hippo has almost no hair and a very thin outer skin layer, which leaves the sensitive tissue underneath exposed. It has no sebaceous glands either, the glands most mammals use to oil and protect their skin. Out in the African sun, a hippo would burn. So it stays in the water all day, and it makes its own sunscreen. This is where the animal stops being merely strange and starts being genuinely remarkable. Hippo skin secretes a thick, colorless fluid that turns red within minutes of hitting the air. For centuries, people looked at that and assumed the animal was sweating blood. It is not blood, and it is not really sweat either. In 2004, Japanese researchers wiped down 2 captive hippos with gauze and isolated what was actually in it. They found 2 unstable pigments, one red and one orange, and named them hipposudoric acid and noroposudoric acid. Both absorb light across the ultraviolet range, which means the animal is producing a working sunscreen on its own skin. And the red pigment does something else. At low concentrations, it stops bacteria from growing. The hippo is not making sunscreen. It is making sunscreen and an antibiotic at the same time. That second property matters more than it sounds. Male hippos fight, and they fight with canine teeth that can reach 20 inches long. They open their jaws to 150 degrees as a threat display, and when that fails, they slash at each other. The wounds are deep, and they happen in warm, still, bacteria-heavy water. Those wounds should get infected constantly. They mostly do not. This is also the animal responsible for a large share of human deaths from wildlife in Africa. Hippos have poor eyesight, sharp hearing, and a nervous temperament, and they will charge anything they read as a threat near the water. An animal that eats only grass is one of the most dangerous animals on the continent, which is not a combination most people expect. Now here is the part that has frustrated chemists for 2 decades. A stable compound that blocks ultraviolet light and kills bacteria at the same time would be genuinely valuable. Researchers said outright that these pigments could be the starting point for pharmaceutically important compounds. The problem is that both pigments fall apart almost immediately once they leave the animal. They polymerize, turning red, then brown, then useless. More than 20 years after they were first isolated, no one has managed to make a stable version. A hippo builds it fresh, continuously, on its own skin, and no laboratory has matched that. It is a strange picture once you put it together. An animal too heavy to float, living in water it cannot swim in, walking along the bottom of a river, coated in a chemical we still cannot reproduce. And the closest living relatives of hippos are not pigs or horses. They are whales. Both descend from a semi-aquatic ancestor, and the 2 lineages solved water in completely opposite ways. Whales committed to it entirely. Hippos never quite did, and got stuck halfway. So the next time you see a hippo in a river looking perfectly at home, remember it is standing on the bottom. It never learned to float, and it never needed to.